You're in the whole 6010.
Welcome into Fantasy Focus Football.
Hey, yo.
It is Tuesday, August 29th. My name is Daniel Dopp, joined by Stephania Bell and Field Yates. Guys, I got to do the show all by myself yesterday. That show was presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. Today's show was presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. Where were you guys? It was great. I mean, it was great because I didn't have to deal with you guys, and Liz is always really nice to me. She makes me feel good about myself. But I didn't get to see you guys, and I love seeing your faces too. Stephania, what were you doing yesterday? Why didn't you want to come in and hang out with us?
What was I doing yesterday? Went back to my boxing class.
Oh, you were boxing. Okay. All right.
Stephania was taking out the frustration that she has in general towards you on a bag instead.
Yes.
That is how I'm approaching getting ready for the season, by punching things.
Okay. Hey, you know what? It might work as long as it's a bag.
It's better than me hitting you.
Exactly.
So I hit bags.
Okay.
I did things like that.
That's fair.
That's sit-ups. All the, it's like going back in the Wayback Machine when you would have training for like track and you'd run so hard you felt like you were going to get sick. That was
Never
me
done
yesterday.
that. Nope.
Yeah.
I was getting traded by the Cardinals yesterday,
Yes, you
just like
were.
everybody else. No, I was. We'll find out in a week. I'll let you guys know in a week. It'll make more sense at that time. But
all
this is
right.
not like, I'm not trying to be coy, but I am being coy right now.
Yeah,
so
sounds like,
it'll make more sense 7 days from right
7
now.
days from now.
Yeah.
All right.
Stephania's looking at me like, holy crap, what did you do? Did we
I
not
know.
talk about
I
this?
really want to know
I
too.
know.
No, we'll talk about it after the show.
Okay,
Yeah.
nothing like, don't you
Okay.
hate it when people drop some hint? Like,
Oof.
I got this really great bit of news. I'm
Okay,
gonna tell
fine.
you, but I'm not going to tell you.
Do you guys want to know the answer?
Yes.
I kind of do. But are we allowed? Is this going to like give away something that we shouldn't do?
I have, albeit brief, only like 37 minutes, a 37-minute cameo in the new Avengers movie. And I shot it yesterday.
Yates. Well, that's incredible.
It's about to be the highest grossing movie of all time.
So yesterday I got flown to Dublin, Ireland for
Stop.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
just
that's-
real quick.
That
I
is
wasn't
so
supposed to say
cool.
anything out loud, but the cat's
Yeah.
out of the bag now.
Oh,
It'll
that's
make more
tough.
sense.
You and Robert Downey Jr. are besties now.
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
well, he's playing
That's
in our
fair.
league with us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So, no, I wish it were that, but I don't have the cachet that Matthew does. So. In a different life.
We got a lot of stuff we're going to talk about today. We got a very little bit of news, not a ton, not a lot happened yesterday. And then we're going to dive into league winners, guys that we think you could leave drafts
Important
with.
stuff here.
Yeah,
Important
some
stuff.
really good ones heading into very important draft weekends. We've already started doing our drafts, but we got a lot more coming up over the next little bit here.
My life over the next 7 days.
Oh.
If not for the fact that I had 2 kids that were young and I normally go to bed early, like people like what kind of loser are you? You don't do anything every night for the next 9 days. I have a fantasy draft.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
how
know.
it
Yeah,
works.
you want to hang out over Labor Day weekend? I'm like, well, depends. I got to take George Pickens in the 5th round at some
Shout
point in
out.
one of my drafts. So yeah,
Shout out to all the relationships that were going strong before fantasy season
Right,
started. Just
right.
know that in 5 or 6 months, you'll have your person back and it's going to be great. Hopefully they have a trophy to show for it.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Listen,
All right.
we have a fan of the show who is an expectant father.
Yeah.
Yep, and there is a serious question about whether there will be draft picks happening when labor comes along.
Yeah, how do you do that?
And he's wondering how to handle it. He's sort of given a window where he promises to
Wow.
put down the phone.
You know what? I think
that's a legit dilemma right there.
I
mean,
know.
not actually, right?
Tom-
Like
Thomas, I'm talking to you.
All right, so Thomas, it's not a dilemma insofar as what the right thing for Thomas is to do. Like you sit there,
no,
you provide
Becca's
support for
well
your
aware.
wife, and you,
Yeah,
and you
she's-
make that very clear.
Yeah.
But for the league, labor can last a long time.
Yes.
We were fortunate in both cases of our children being born, where we were in and out. Or sorry, first of all, not me.
I know.
I didn't do a damn thing. All right, I just sat there and
Glad you checked
watched
yourself
TikToks.
right
all
there.
right, so let me
Glad
be
you
very
checked
clear about
yourself.
that. Yes.
He was
That was
like,
a good
we.
Chapin.
The proverbial we.
Yeah,
Got it.
Chapin, who's tougher than certainly me and most
Yeah.
every person I know.
And a better
like,
athlete.
At this point, that's so far established. I don't even need to remind people of it. But she was a fairly efficient. It was fairly efficient labor in both cases. We've got plenty of friends though that it's got in the hospital Friday morning. That baby came out on Sunday at noon. So
72 hours from Mama Dopp.
okay, wow, she is a legend for that.
1,000,
So
yeah.
I think you have to.
It's
You know
my
what?
fault.
I think the league mates need to step up. And maybe this is the sap in me talking, but step up and be patient for Thomas.
That's
Yeah.
right.
This is the most important. Does he have children yet? Besides,
No,
okay,
no,
this
this
would be
is
the
the
most
first
important
baby.
day of his life and his
And
wife's life as well.
Becca.
He needs to
Thomas and
have the
Becca.
ability to have unbridled support for his wife. So the rest of the league, do the draft now. If they're not in the hospital yet, are they?
No.
Okay,
But,
well, either move it
but-
up before labor is expected, or if he texts you guys, an hour before the draft, I'm in the hospital. Wait. Do the right thing.
And on top of doing the right thing, if Thomas comes in last place, the fantasy loser punishment is the league gets to name the baby. I think that's only fair, too.
Like, yes, except for the fact that would be a long time for the baby to not have a name.
The baby in between.
The baby.
The baby.
The baby.
Can you just call it the baby?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like cute. Babies are cute. All right, let's move on. We'll talk about some football. People want to hear about some football.
No, but we have a little bit more administrative news, and then we're getting right to the football.
Oh, you're right. We
Okay,
do.
so
Field Yates.
super dope. All right, you guys know if you've been listening recently, we have opened up a Veterans League. People submitted an application with a little bit about themselves and the service that he or she performed for this country, either in active duty or past duty, which we cannot thank them enough for. The numbers are overwhelming. Ridiculous amount of people in a great way sent us an application. We were so fired up, and we realized we're just 4 of us, right? With Mike included. There's only so many people that we can have be a part of a Veterans League. Rewind to this past weekend. Brian Marshall, Dan Bohm, each teammates of ours here at ESPN, part of the games group, they reach out and they say, hey, I think we can get every person that applied into the Veterans League.
What?
I said, there's no way. I said, maybe for next year. They said, I think for this year. So they are much smarter than I am. No surprise there. They are also incredibly diligent. Dan Bohm has poured his weekend into making this a reality. If you applied and we had to go by a certain date, you are going to get an email at some point this week from somebody at ESPN, somebody on the ESPN fantasy roster that you read or listen to or watch on TV, somebody that works here at ESPN, as we are going to have 25 veteran leagues. They're going to, at the end of the season, be whittled down, almost like a tournament style. 25 veterans leagues. It's going to be incredible. Hundreds upon hundreds of veterans are now going to be in this Veterans League. Some of them have already been set up, but if you have not yet heard from somebody at ESPN, keep an eye out for an email and be ready to draft. It is absolutely incredible that these people were able to pull this together, and the support was overwhelming. So this is super dope that we're going to get so many people, literally hundreds of veterans, all playing in what will eventually become one league.
It's
25 leagues brought down to one by the end of the season.
I love it.
It's cool. It's like you guys have heard us reference the Scott Fish Bowl before on this show. It's like a mini Scott Fish Bowl. So we are extremely excited about this. And please, if you submitted an application, make sure you continue to check your email, as you may receive something as soon as today, but certainly over the next couple of days, as we are now just 9 days away from the football season, fired up for this new, expanded, incredible, massive Veterans League.
This is so exciting. We've never done anything like this before. Obviously, Fishbowl is the only thing that we've done like this, but we've never done it on our own. And so I'm really excited to see how this comes together.
It's going to be great. And what we're going to do is for the playoffs, the top 3 teams from each league are going to this is all going to be in the email, by the way. It's going to be the top 3 teams from each of the 25 leagues will basically be thrown into a big tournament style for 3 weeks, and highest score wins the league. Yet to be determined what that person's prize will be. It's possible they'll replace me on the podcast. That's one of the names, one of the ideas that's been thrown around. So yeah, I know. No, you lock it up. But yes, it's going to be great. So thank you to Dan Bohm, Brian Marshall, the entire games group, and Meg Burgoon for soliciting a bunch of people at ESPN that can be service commissioners and also a big part of this. So 25 leagues. There will be one winner that emerges from those 25 leagues. Speaking of those winners from leagues, if you want to get a draft board because you are drafting, check out our friends at TrophySmack.com. 2-day shipping, 20% off discount code. Hey, and if you want one of these cool belts or a turnover chain for the champion of your league, you can get 10% off with the code FOCUSBELT. Again, that's TrophySmack.com. All right. I will buy whoever wins the Veterans League a board and a belt. That's the starting. I mean, there's going to be a whole lot more than this. A lot more than that. But I will be buying that person a board for next year and a belt for this year.
How are you going to know?
Board for next year.
Got it.
Trophy belt for this year.
I love it, Field. Yep. All right, let's talk about some news. We have a cut down days going on right now, and honestly, not a whole lot happened yesterday that felt like it really impacted our fantasy landscape per se. There was one thing that did sort of stand out to me, Field, I thought was interesting, which was the Arizona Cardinals deciding to release Colt McCoy in order to have Joshua Dobbs or Clayton Tune take over as the signal caller starting in week 1. Right. Does this impact, like, we're not going to draft either of those quarterbacks, but does this impact either Marquise Brown or Rondale Moore or James Conner or anyone else in this Cardinals offense? First of all, to our Cardinals fans, listeners out there, I got a little bit of advice for you, okay? If you don't already
find a way to subscribe to both the Pac-12 network and the ACC network. Caleb Williams, Drake May.
Those are the
Look,
two
you're bringing
guys.
up a sore topic with Pac-12.
If you will.
I know it is difficult. If you were like me on
Arizona
Saturday night
fans
trying
are
to
like,
find,
what
I
do we
know.
do?
And also this past Saturday night, it was not exactly easy to find Caleb Williams, this prodigy player, the Heisman Trophy winner, on live TV. So yes, do yourself a favor. Find a way to get a Pac-12 and an ACC network subscription, because it's going to be a long season. Kyler Murray officially on PUP. That was totally expected.
Yep.
No one thought he'd be available in the first 4 weeks. We'll follow that one as he eventually returns. If he eventually returns, I am not totally certain when that will be. But Josh Dobbs acquitted himself pretty well last year down the stretch. Remember last year in Week 18 in a playoff game, effectively.
Yep.
For the Titans, he completed 69% of his passes, looked pretty sharp, kept them in that game for a little while. So I don't know that it's really an upgrade, really a downgrade at all from Colt McCoy. Like, I look at it as like, I feel about the same way that I did prior to the news yesterday. So I haven't made any changes to my rankings whatsoever about Hollywood Brown, Rondale Moore, James Conner, Zach Ertz. Those guys are going to feast because there's a ton of volume. And while the Cardinals probably won't run the football that well and may, because of game script, not be able to run the football that much, that's just fine for James Conner. He has no competition for carries or targets out of the backfield right now. He remains this incredibly boring but very useful RB2.
Yep. All right, we're going to keep watching as cutdowns are going to keep happening throughout the rest of the day. If anything comes up, we'll talk about it some more. But we're going to dive into league winners.
Yeah, we are. This is a good one right here.
Big draft season right now. Everyone's doing drafts like we talked about. I want to ask you, when we're talking about league winners, you've got some guys in here. Stephania's got some guys in here. I've got some guys. What does a league winner, what does that definition mean to you? And do you have an example of a player that you could give us?
I think it's important to discuss the parameters here. This is not Christian McCaffrey or Austin Eckler or Justin Jefferson,
Way to go on a
who
limb
might
with
be
those
the
guys.
first 3 picks in your draft, right? Obviously, if those guys perform to expectations, it will definitely help your cause. But nobody is saying that those guys will be anything other than like the very, very best at their positions. It's also not guys that you've never heard of, or guys that are going in the 15th round, or guys that might not go drafted at all. I view league winners as this: players that are being drafted fairly early, but we think could take a quantum leap into stardom. They just aren't going where stars are already being taken, or at least the level of stardom they could reach. Those players that have already reached that level are going higher than them. So think back to last year. 2 years ago is the best example. 2 years ago, Cooper Kupp was a top 20 wide receiver in terms of ADP, and he has the best season for a wide receiver since like the Jerry Rice days, right? Yep. That guy won so many leagues almost by himself last season. Here are some examples. Josh Jacobs, his ADP, 57th overall last year, had an incredible season. League-winning upside. A.J. Brown, who, by the way, was on the 5th highest percentage of championship-winning teams last year, had an ADP of 36.4. That's well behind where he is going this year, right? He's going probably 2 full rounds earlier. Amon-Ra St. Brown, a top 10 wide receiver last season, was going 65th overall. That's like wide receiver 25 last year. So it's not going to be names that you haven't heard of, and it's also not going to be names of guys that you're taking in the first 3 picks. It's going to be somewhere in between, and we'll dive into these players on a case-by-case basis.
All right, so go ahead, Stephania.
I think there's a little risk reward too, because some of these guys, we're not saying they are going to be, we're saying they could be, but it could also be, it's a gamble with some of them. And so they're
one name
just
in
guys,
particular I'll bring up. Lot of risk.
Yeah.
A lot of
risk. So
risk.
there's guys with opportunity, but I think this is fun because every year when we look back and we do the fantasy awards, we're looking at guys and we're saying, did you think this guy would be such a game changer?
Yeah.
Amon-Ra St. Brown is the one that first came to mind because he just exploded last year.
So I think we're all expecting big things. First name, I'm going to throw it out here. We're all expecting big things out of Garrett Wilson.
Yeah, but let me define why he would be a league winner. Everybody is excited about Garrett Wilson. I mean, every single person who covers fantasy football, who watches football, everybody except for defensive backs that have to cover Garrett Wilson are excited about Garrett Wilson. And yet, based off ADP and also based off of our wide receiver ranks, he's still like wide receiver 10, right? So imagine if Garrett Wilson instead finishes as like wide receiver 3 or 4 this year. You would be getting like a full round, maybe even a round and a half discount on a superstar player, which is pretty rare at the top of the boards. Garrett Wilson last season, 7th in the NFL in targets with god-awful quarterback play. If Garrett Wilson starts to invoke, and I think he will in some ways, some Davante Adams qualities this year, he has a legitimate path to a top 3 wide receiver finish. The Jets do not have a ton of depth at wide receiver. Garrett Wilson is by far the alpha. In some ways, the personnel of this team reminds me of some of the old Packers rosters that we saw. Yep. Garrett Wilson has league-winning upside, even though he's going to go probably in the first 20 to 25 picks of your draft.
So that's what I wanted to say. And looking at his ADP, we've been talking about Garrett Wilson a bunch, right? Yeah. We've been talking about how much we love this guy, what the upside can be. His ADP has risen. He's coming off the board at the end of the second round. He's now the 8th wide receiver off the board, ahead of A.J. Brown and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So, like, he's moving up the boards. Still, though, there's still room based on the volume that he saw, Stephania, last year, to pay off even this wide receiver 8 spot.
Well, I think we saw what he could be. And as Field referenced, the quarterback play was less than what you expect him to have this year with Aaron Rodgers. I think people's hesitation, if there has been any, has been, well, Aaron Rodgers got these other wide receivers to come join him. There's Randall Cobb, there's Allen Lazard. Is Garrett Wilson going to get the attention? But you referenced the point that I was going to make, which is the Davante Adams comparison. Like, Aaron Rodgers is already, if you're watching Hard Knocks, and he's already talked about how much he likes Garrett Wilson and how good Garrett Wilson is. We hadn't seen them together until that one preseason game. And in the little bit of time that they were together, who did he look for in the end zone?
Yep.
It was Garrett Wilson, who made a great catch and a great play. And that right there, Aaron Rodgers is built on trust. We know that. He's already established that that relationship is going to succeed. And Garrett Wilson only had 4 touchdowns last year. If they look like that in the red zone, then he's going to have way more touchdowns with Aaron Rodgers.
So just a reminder, like, the further you move down the board, the less important 1-round discounts become. You're looking for guys who are like 7 or 8 or 9-round discounts, but still, given that Garrett Wilson's current ADP is the back end of the second round, and we're saying there's a path where he should actually be drafted right now as like the 7th overall player on the board. If he reaches that ceiling, he'll prove to be a league winner.
Yeah. Field, there is another wide receiver we're going to talk about. We're expecting Kenny Pickett to take another step here in his second year at the quarterback position. And there's a Steelers wide receiver that we think maybe could take another step. Who do you like here?
That would be George Pickens, who I'm looking at the first 50 picks right now in terms of ADP, and you still don't see George Pickens. I'm going to have to keep moving down my board. Well, let's talk about George Pickens as a player. He is an absolute freak. If not for some questions about maturity coming out of the draft last year, he would have been a first-round pick. I swear, every time George Pickens makes a catch, it's cool. I don't know how that's possible, but George Pickens only makes really legitimately cool catches. If Kenny Pickett takes that step forward that everybody is forecasting right now, who do we think has more touchdown upside in this Steelers offense? And this is not a Deontay Johnson joke from scoring 0 last year. This is a player who has not yet reached 10 receiving touchdowns in a single season. George Pickens' talent is off the charts. Our guy Ryan Clark, one of the best analysts in all of football land, was talking about the talent of George Pickens and how it's like astronomical, right? We could be talking about a guy who in pure talent alone, I'm just talking talent, not production so far, is a top 5 talent at the wide receiver spot in the NFL. If this Steelers offense advances and George Pickens advances and becomes the alpha in this offense, he is going to smash his ADP by so far. I'm currently looking at it right now. It's so far down from number 1 that I still haven't found it yet. It is
wide receiver 31.
He's going in the 9th round.
Yeah.
So this one might make more sense to people than Garrett Wilson, because it's like, wait, really? Garrett Wilson's like a top 20 pick. This is the secret sauce of a potential league winner right here. A guy who's going as wide receiver 31, who maybe deserves to be going as like wide receiver 15.
Every time I watch George Pickens out on the field.
That's fine.
That one's going to hit a lot. So sorry.
Pickett to Pickens. that's going to be what you want to see.
You see so easily the skill, right? You see the one-handed catches. You see the way that like he's able to have that body control and that concentration.
He's just cooler than whoever your favorite receiver is. George Pickens is cooler than your favorite receiver.
And you talked about which one of these guys is going to get touchdowns. George Pickens is 6'3", Stephania. If there's one guy that's got a bigger body, you can't teach size. As much as Deontay Johnson would love to teach size, he just can't do that. So yeah, there is definitely more touchdown equity, I feel like, in George Pickens in this offense. And if we're talking about a potential second-year leap to match what Kenny Pickett does.
I think we're already seeing it from Kenny Pickett. I mean, just how he looks right now.
My NFL preseason MVP.
Yeah.
5 drives, 5 touchdowns for the Steelers with Kenny Pickett under center.
He has a perfect passer rating, I believe, entering the season.
That seems good. I'm not a math guy, but that seems good. Yeah.
It's not bad.
Not a math guy.
I think if as Kenny Pickett progresses, so progress the receivers. And if George Pickens happens to be the one that he defaults to, then...
Could he be this year's A.J. Brown is the question I have.
Ooh.
He had the second highest ADOT last year, did George Pickens in the NFL. Average depth of target. I think there's a path for him to become this year's A.J. Brown. Linear, big-bodied, physical, fast as all get-out wide receiver whose quarterback takes a big leap this year, and maybe he pushes for 12 or 13 receiving touchdowns.
One of the things that A.J. Brown does, I love that Seth Walder metric about the openness. He is like the best receiver in the league for being able to get open, and he is able to manufacture that. We'll see if George Pickens can do that.
I love that. Stephania, let's talk about this next guy.
Why are you making me do it?
I want to start with you. Because I think this is it. It's not mean. It's just a tough question.
You guys are picking on me.
So, Atlanta Falcons.
No. Don't come to me. I don't think it's fair to Stephania. She doesn't feel this way about this player. You don't feel this way about him, do you?
I don't, but maybe that's why you wanted me to start with the.
All right, let's start with you.
You don't. I actually think Kyle Pitts has league-winning upside.
All right, tell us why.
I was going to actually tell Stephania, if you want to leave the studio for 5 minutes, it's okay.
No, but here's what I'll say. Because whatever you're about to say, I would say that is the upside. I just have less confidence it'll get there. So go ahead.
Yeah.
Give your argument.
So I'm glad that you agree with that because, again, these are league-winning players. Stephania noted very specifically at the beginning of this, these guys have some risk baked into them. The risk in Kyle Pitts, I don't think is a Kyle Pitts skill set thing. I think it's 2 things. It's will this offense allow him to be great, and will his knee hold up over the course of the season? Mm-hmm. But in a world in which Kyle Pitts stays healthy for 17 games, and the Falcons screw the proverbial head on straight and decide to feature him as the focal point of their passing game, you can both have a monster Bijan Robinson season and a monster Kyle Pitts season. Is it likely? The past 2 years would suggest it is not likely. That being said, if you're looking at other wide receivers that are being drafted further down the board than Kyle Pitts, you find the one that screams league-winning upside. Do you think there's a world in which Tyler Higbee has 125 catches, which is going to, that's too much. Is there a world in which Tyler Higbee has 85 catches for 1,100 yards and 12 touchdowns?
No.
It seems like a pretty unlikely world to me. It may be a 10% chance, and that might be being generous. But Kyle Pitts, if he is featured, could absolutely crush his ADP. Maybe I will be the one who is the sucker in this scenario. Maybe I'm too infatuated by, check this out, people, a 22-year-old who ran a 4.4 4.40, who can run like the wind, he can move like a freaking running back in his route running. He's big. He does everything well physically. Maybe I'm the sucker for wanting more out of that kind of player. But if the Falcons decide to do the exact same thing as we want, he has league-winning upside.
He does. I agree with that. I want to say this really quickly, Stephania. I agree with everything you just said, Field. We're doing a draft right now, our Michigan men draft with a bunch of our friends. I just drafted Kyle Pitts as my tight end because it got to a point where once you get to the board, the upside of the other tight ends that are on the board with Kyle Pitts is not as big as Kyle Pitts' upside.
Just so if you're looking at ceiling, taken after him, that's exactly what it is. Pat Freiermuth, I love the kid.
I do too.
Doesn't have the upside of Kyle Pitts. Isn't there. The floor is significantly higher than Kyle Pitts.
Totally fair.
The upside though, Kyle Pitts, even in a season in which he disappointed in some ways, specifically the touchdown department, he became the second rookie tight end ever with 1,000 receiving yards.
And that's why Pat Freiermuth is not a league winner and why we're talking about Kyle Pitts because of that skill set as a potential league winner. That doesn't mean it's going to happen, but that ceiling is there where he could be that person. I don't know. Stephania, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think everyone knows by now what my anxiety around Kyle Pitts is, and it has to do with the injury things. I'll just remind you, the things that concern me were the injury was in November. The team reported it as an MCL sprain. That's all we heard. He had surgery back then and was still not cleared to do anything. Nothing. Zero in minicamp. Something that should have been fully resolved by then. When he did show up at training camp, he's wearing a bulky functional brace, something you don't really see guys wear after that procedure. So already I'm thinking there's a little more to this story than we have the information on. Okay, start with that. And then I just didn't see it. There was like no volume of work. And the question I would ask to people are like, yeah, but it's Kyle Pitts and he'll be fine. Whenever we have a player who does not participate much in the preseason and they are coming off an injury and we know we need to get them acclimated to football and acclimated to volume of work, we get nervous. Like, hey, we haven't seen this guy. We don't. What's going to happen when they're put in place to be on the field? You know, for 75% of the snaps, they're meant to be carrying a full load across 17 weeks.
Yeah.
That's when I start to get nervous.
Sure.
So that to me is the risk. It's not the talent. The guy is amazingly talented. It's that combined with the usage. I think they're going to run multiple tight end sets. That's what we saw a lot of even in the joint practices. He's got the ability to be a difference maker. They ran some very cool plays with him sort of cutting across the middle on the backside. I think he can be a great asset to them. I don't know they're going to use him that way. I don't know he's going to hold up.
I'm not sure that these things need to be mutually exclusive. You can have all those fears and all those things can be true, and the things that we're talking about
and
field
he
of
could
like
assuage them and be phenomenal.
Yep.
We just said both mutually exclusive and assuaged in like the same 7-second bite.
Yeah.
I think
Listen
I know
to
both of
Fantasy
those
Focus
things.
and get smarter.
I think
Without
I
a
know
doubt.
what both of those things mean, but I'm not going to lie to you. There's 10% of me that is like not entirely sure I know what they mean.
All right, let's move on. We got a couple of guys. We got a handful of guys.
Got a
here
lot of
that
them. Yeah,
I'm
3
really
good ones
excited
coming
about.
up here. Yeah.
Finally, a rookie coming up here, Field Yates. We got one rookie we wanted to. Actually, we got 2 rookies we're going to talk
back to
about
back,
here.
yeah.
But Anthony Richardson.
All right, let's talk about this for a second.
This is a guy that has as wide of a range of outcomes as it feels like it gets right now in fantasy football.
I just told you guys that whoever you think the coolest wide receiver is in fantasy football, George Pickens is cooler than that receiver. Whoever you think is the most athletic player at the quarterback position, when you factor in size and speed, not just size, when you factor in both of them, Anthony Richardson is more athletic than that player.
By a mile.
By a mile. What he did at the combine was breathtaking.
Sick.
It completely stole the event, and there were some absolute freaks who were also at that event who lost some of their shine because Anthony Richardson just dominated that significantly. He's playing in a system under Shane Steichen that, of course, is very similar, if not identical, to the system that Jalen Hurts played in last year. Who led the NFL in terms of designed quarterback rushes last season? Jalen Hurts, ding, ding, ding. How many did he have? 99. That's just designed runs, okay? So do the math. Jalen Hurts missed multiple games towards the end of last season. If you are getting somewhere between 6 and 8 designed runs for Anthony Richardson per game, plus the scrambles that are likely to take place because he's a young quarterback who has so much athletic ability that if he senses pressure, he'll say, bye-bye, I'm taking off. I am running, okay? Jonathan Taylor, he might not be a Colt. Defenses are going to probably say, let's pin our ears back and try to attack Anthony Richardson. It may not be pretty. It also may not matter. If Anthony Richardson is unleashed as a runner right away, he has league-winning upside. He does not need to be a prolific passer who's throwing for 250 yards and 3 touchdowns a game. He needs to be Justin Fields last year, right? Rush for over 1,000 yards, and I don't care if they are dead last in passing yards per game, which I'm pretty sure the Bears were last year. They weren't that far off if they weren't dead last. That's all he needs to be. Is it a guarantee he gets there? Of course not. There are some legitimate concerns about this Colts offense right now, not the least of which is that their best player is on the PUP list and may never play a down for them again. Anthony Richardson is an erratic passer. We saw that during his final season in college. No surprise whatsoever. I don't have him ranked inside my top 10 for quarterbacks, but would I be surprised if Anthony Richardson has a top 5 quarterback season on a points per game basis once he kind of figures things out? Not at all.
He's definitely got that top 5 QB upside, potentially QB1 upside on a weekly basis, right? We saw that last year with Justin Fields. I mean, whether it's season long or not, you're going to have spike weeks from Anthony Richardson.
Think Lamar Jackson at the end of his rookie season. Think Jalen Hurts at the end of his rookie or second season. I believe it was the end of his rookie season.
Year, the last 4 games.
Where he got really hot again.
Yep.
Think Justin Fields last year, middle of that season. What I can't guarantee you is that it's going to happen at any point, and I certainly can't guarantee you that it's going to happen from start to finish.
Yeah.
But if by the end of September, Anthony Richardson's kind of figured it out and the Colts are as aggressive rushing him as the Eagles were with Jalen Hurts, watch out, people.
Let me make a case for why I think it will work out.
Okay.
So Anthony Richardson, we keep talking about what he did at Florida and how he looked in the erratic passing and the accuracy element, right?
I like it when you agree with me, by the way.
It makes me feel better
on that
too.
part. Yeah. But here's what Anthony Richardson did before he went to the Combine. He started working with Tom Gormley. Tom Gormley also worked with Brock Purdy, and he's worked with a number of throwers. He's a physical therapist who also happens to be a throwing coach, huge background in throwing mechanics. And you know what he's found a niche in? Developing throwing and quarterbacks. Think about baseball pitchers. All they do in the offseason is they work on their volume. They progress when they take a little bit of rest, and then they progress and ramp up towards the season and develop their throwing volume. They work on their spin rate. They work on all that. What if you had someone who is dedicated to doing the same things, but for a quarterback, looking at their throwing mechanics, their throwing metrics, what they need to do on the field, how they throw, how they use their footwork relative to it. That's what he's doing with quarterbacks. Keep that name in mind, because this guy, more and more quarterbacks are starting to seek out his services because they're talking to quarterbacks like Brock Purdy who have worked with him, and it has really allowed them to develop their game. So the idea that you can't become something bigger than what you were in college, that you can't develop your skill set beyond it, is false. It's just never really been tried. Think of what most quarterbacks do in the offseason. They rest. Yeah. And then they start just throwing.
They play golf.
Yeah, they play golf.
Often against each other.
Right. And they might throw to their receivers, but they're not doing it it's very different than how a pitcher approaches return to throwing. Sure. What if you had an analogous development for quarterbacks? I think you're going to start to see that. Anthony Richardson has done that. He's an incredibly hard worker. And I think that's some of what the coaches are seeing in Indy. Now, he's still got to get used to the NFL. He's still going to be harassed by defenses. He still is potentially losing Jonathan Taylor, which I think is a terrible loss for him. But as far as his ability to throw, that's not a finished product. So I like it.
It's going to happen at some point. What we don't know is whether it happens in the middle of this season, at the end of this season. But as we also know, in fantasy football, league winners are not just players that you have from start to finish on your roster. As a matter of fact, Justin Fields was often drafted last year and then often dropped after a terrible start to last season. Yep. A league winner might be a guy that if your quarterback is just kind of milling along and giving you average but nothing special production, or you've got a quarterback that regresses and is not pulling his weight, and you decide to roll the dice on Anthony Richardson in week 6, again, there could be a stretch where Anthony Richardson replicates Justin Fields from last season. League winning upside for Anthony Richardson.
Last night, I did a super flex draft.
Okay.
Had first overall pick. Lucky me.
Not nice to brag.
So I grabbed Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah.
And decided this is the perfect scenario. No, just a redraft league.
Yeah.
But the perfect scenario. Why not take the upside? Because I got the safety of Patrick Mahomes on Anthony Richardson as my QB2. Like, you're not going to have any better safety of a floor. And on those 2 weeks where both Patrick Mahomes and Anthony Richardson scored 35 points, you're going to be feeling great about it. But there's going to be that up and down. This is going to be like the Mike Evans or Mike Williams type of a situation. But from a quarterback situation, I think we'll have some spike weeks here as we try to figure out who Anthony Richardson is. But as a part of that conversation field, he might not have a running back. Today is the deadline that was set forth by the Colts for Jonathan Taylor to find a trade partner, August 29th.
Sure.
One, have you heard anything else, too, just from your insider circles?
The only thing I would say is that I'm dubious that this deadline is fixed.
Can it be moved? Yeah, that was my thought.
My sense is this. It's a deadline because we have the roster cutdowns, and the Colts have to decide by 4 p.m. today whether to remove Jonathan Taylor from the PUP list.
That's the key.
And that's a roster spot that if Jonathan Taylor is so discontent that he's not going to play for the Colts under any circumstances, then why would they keep him on the 53-man roster and have to lose somebody else?
Can he accrue a season if he's on PUP? Or does that not? Does that count as
games? He has to be on the active roster for a total of, I believe it's 8 games.
8 games.
8 or 9 games. But I think Jonathan Taylor's focus is less on accruing a season and more on getting the hell out of Indianapolis.
Yeah, seems that way.
But that's the deadline for now. If there's some irons in the fire and they just haven't been able to figure this out, I think this deadline can be pushed. I think the Colts would activate Jonathan Taylor by 4 p.m., keep him on the roster with the wink to Jonathan. We're going to get something done here over the next probably 3 or 4 days. But that's why this player has league-winning upside.
He totally does.
Because if you have done a draft up to this point, Jonathan Taylor could be going anywhere right now. As a matter of fact, to that point, Jonathan bleeping Taylor, who's awesome, is going right now, and it's his current ADP, back into the third round 10-team leagues. 29th overall is Jonathan Taylor. So if Jonathan Taylor, let's just make this scenario up. Our show will get off the air around noon. Let's say at, let's see, 2:30, Shefty drops a tweet and says, hey, Jonathan Taylor's been traded to the Miami Dolphins. If you got Jonathan Taylor at 32nd overall or 28th overall, and he goes to Miami, how high will he go if he gets traded today to Miami and you have a draft tomorrow? 7th, 8th, 10th?
Top 7, yeah.
And by the way, he's ready to come off the PUP list.
Put it this way.
If anybody's wondering, he's ready.
Yeah. So I think that, to me, it is such a roll of the dice, but so much upside here. You would never have this conversation surrounding Jonathan Taylor if not for these circumstances. You would just say, no, that guy rules. He's going to be, probably a top 15 pick, whether he's in Indianapolis or whether he's not in Indianapolis. And I've seen Jonathan Taylor in mock drafts I've done go even lower than pick number 29 overall. Think about what happened for those that took Josh Jacobs prior to his news over the weekend that he was back. They have been rewarded for it. He was going in like the 4th round in drafts that I was a part of, mock drafts. So you are getting crazy value for Jonathan Taylor if he plays.
And he always played with something to prove. And he is angry, not just about this, about getting hurt last year and having that compromise his season. A guy who never missed time, never missed games until last year, got that addressed in a surgery in January. His ankle will be strong now. It's not going to be a problem for him this year. And boy, is he going to play with a chip on his shoulder about everything. So I love the upside for him.
Which one do you think, and this is just a conversation, which one do you think has more risk this year? Anthony Richardson or Jonathan Taylor? We're talking about these two Colts. Both of them have league up.
Jonathan Taylor.
You think the Jonathan Taylor risk
the price is so different, and we're talking about a player who, even if you get him in the 4th round, right? Richardson right now, if I have this correctly, he's going in the 14th round.
Okay. Yeah. So he's basically free at that point.
You're free. Yeah. Now, if both of them play, who do I think is like the much better bet to like definitely be good? Obviously, it's Jonathan Taylor. Yeah. But the price is so substantially lower for Anthony Richardson that he feels like the far riskier play. I am dubious, 1137 comments, that Jonathan Taylor is traded today. But I think at some point before the season begins, there's a very real possibility that the Colts and somebody get a deal done.
As long they wouldn't not activate him, because that's going to hurt somebody wants to use him right away.
Right.
So they're going to put him on the active roster. You're pretty convinced.
By my suspicion is that the only way that he goes to the PUP list today is if the Colts feel like there is zero chance they're trading him. Yeah. Like there's no way whatsoever that we are trading Jonathan Taylor. That would be my suspicion, because who wants to give the Colts a 1st round pick or something close to it, give Jonathan Taylor $18 million a year or something close to it, whatever the number is, and not be able to utilize him for the first 4 weeks of the season.
Yeah.
But the Colts have not done all the smartest things to this point. So just
nice way of putting it. I've been a little. That was. I've had some choice words. Jim Irsay. Let's reiterate that because he has really put his staff in a bind here.
Field, there's another running back that is coming off the board within 8 spots of Jonathan Taylor, and that's rookie Jahmyr Gibbs. We're always talking about Bijan Robinson because he's the one that everyone's excited about.
Yeah.
But I think Jahmyr Gibbs has that same league-winning potential here.
Sure does. 81 catches for Alvin Kamara as a rookie. I mentioned that because Jahmyr Gibbs, if he is Alvin Kamara 2.0, that's the kind of potential that we are talking about. We always remind people about just how much more valuable a target is as opposed to a carry for a running back. There was data in recent years that suggested one target is 2.5 times more powerful and important than one carry.
Yep.
What if Jahmyr Gibbs has 110 targets this year? Who are the Lions' best pass catchers, not named Amon-Ra St. Brown? Jamison Williams, when he's available, he's not going to be available for the first 6 weeks of the season.
We don't even know that he's one of the Lions' best pass catchers.
Yeah, he's definitely a wild card. It should be on paper that Jahmyr Gibbs is a top 3 targeted player for the Lions from Jump Street.
Yep.
If they do what I expect them to do, which is why they used the 12th overall pick on Jahmyr Gibbs, he could have a real chance of being a top 3 running back in terms of receptions this season. If he gets there, just go back over the years and find every running back It was top 3 in receptions in each of the past 10 years. And go find out what the floor is. I'm here to tell you that floor is super ridiculously high, and we know what the ceiling is. The ceiling is being the best running back in fantasy. So Jahmyr Gibbs, massive talent, unbelievable in the open field. He's going to make somebody look silly in week 1 against the Chiefs in the passing game. Somebody for the Chiefs right now, I feel bad for the defensive player. And whoever they play in week 2, I feel bad for that defensive player because that player is also going to look silly. He's great in the passing game if the Lions do what I expect them to do, because the Lions have a brilliant offensive coordinator in Ben Johnson.
He's so good.
You play to finish first in fantasy football. Take Jahmyr Gibbs as your RB2.
I love it.
Yeah.
I've been seeing a couple of people decide to wait and take Jahmyr Gibbs in case you want to punt on the running back position, load up on pass catchers, maybe a Travis Kelce. Jahmyr Gibbs as your potential low-end RB1, I still think that's a little rich for me. But if he has this league-winning upside, and we've talked about Jameson Williams not going to be there for the first 6 games, so we think there's at least going to be a little bit of an extra workload to start the season to be able to help get you going there. So
just look at some of the players that are in the same spot, though.
And who's going to be who else is going to be a running back for them? Of any consequence.
David Montgomery should be okay.
I still don't think
like,
of any consequence.
So, and also some of the players being drafted close to Jahmyr Gibbs, who has more upside, Jahmyr Gibbs or James Conner?
Jahmyr
Gibbs or Miles Sanders, who are both players that I like for what they are, right?
Being drafted at the same time.
Yeah, it's pretty close.
I don't
Gibbs
feel like
continues
because
to fly
in
up
my
draft
mind there's
boards,
such a
but
big gap.
Yeah,
but
yeah, I mean, those are the kind of players. Dameon Pierce, who I like a lot, obviously, but Gibbs' pass catching is still so significant that he could eclipse these great runners like Dameon Pierce and Ken Walker III, who might catch 40 passes this year, but their teams might also deflect some of the pass catching attention to other players because they both figure to use a committee approach in the backfield.
Do you think that these Lions running backs are better this year than they were last year? And that's no shade at Swift and Jamal Williams.
Without question.
And last year, the Detroit Lions led all running backs in fantasy points per game. And this year, we got 2 more guys that we really love.
Did they? That's because one of them scored 17 touchdowns.
Well, I understand the 17 touchdowns.
I think there's a bit of a trap in that stat because it's a season-long stat and because Jamal Williams broke every efficiency model. But I do think this backfield is very, very talented.
I'll say the opposite of that because I think you take away half of Jamal Williams' touchdowns and give it to actual production within the passing game to these 2 guys, and I think it starts to even itself out a little bit.
Yeah, or it could be that Jared Goff throws 8 touchdowns instead to players that aren't running backs. So I think there's a bit of a fool's errand in that number 1 or most points scored amongst all backfields last season. But I mean, it's still a very valuable
watch
backfield.
this. Here's what's going to happen. It's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan Robinson are going to finish 1 and 2.
How great would that be?
They're going to just
I'd love
blow
that.
up
I would love
the
that
whole
right there.
running
Shoot.
back model.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, I'd like it if Christian McCaffrey was in there.
Yeah,
too,
he'll be in the list.
He could be RB3 with 1/2 of 1 point fewer than Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan, who tie for the
A
most points
healthy
among all running
CMC
backs.
to get through the entire postseason, plus finishing as RB3. I'd take that.
Yeah,
I would take it too. All right, Field. Let's pay some bills.
Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance?
Yep.
Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help, like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance, and more. And Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
With the NFL season right around the corner, nonstop football action is in sight. You can get in on the action with DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and score $200 in bonus bets instantly. Nobody's missing out on the action this season. All DraftKings customers can take advantage of 2 new offers every game day this September. Life's more fun when you're in on the action. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app before kickoff. Use the code FFF and get $200 in bonus bets instantly when you bet just $5 on any NFL bet. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook with the code FFF. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit 100gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. See dkng.co/football for eligibility, terms, and responsible gaming resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. Eligibility and deposit restrictions apply. Gosh. C-.
That was not league winning upside
I
right there.
gotta work on that
Not
one.
league winning upside right
It's a
there.
little different than last year. Last year's flowed a little better. I gotta work on some of this.
Do you like
just the preseason?
It is
There's
the
a lot of
preseason. It's my
opportunity
preseason
to
too.
improve. Yeah.
We're
That's
gonna
right.
cut to like a shot of Daniel at home tonight doing like Ron Burgundy vocal exercises
right,
at home in the mirror.
That would be so funny, actually.
So good. Please record.
Yeah, I think I could have a good time. Milk was a bad choice. I won't. By the way, did you hear who just did Christopher Nolan? Is that the guy that did Oppenheimer?
Yeah.
So I was just listening to the Rich Eisen show.
By the way, really good movie.
I heard it's great. I haven't watched it yet.
Oh, it's really
Rich Eisen asked Christopher Nolan his favorite put the controller down movies when they come on the television.
Okay. Forgetting Sarah Marshall, but
He didn't say that, although that's mine. He said Talladega Nights, the Ballad of Ricky Bobby.
Really?
Can you imagine?
That's
Christopher Nolan
he's like
says
the Dark Knight, right? Didn't he do the Dark
yeah,
Knight too?
yeah.
I mean, and he's Dark Knight, Oppenheimer, and he's like Talladega Nights.
Talladega Nights is the movie I can't say no to when it comes on the TV. I just love that.
So good.
sure.
That's so much fun. All right. Let's talk about a couple more guys we think have some potential league-winning upside.
Yeah, let me ask you about some of these players, Daniel, because I think some of these were your and Stephania's submissions to the conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
You think Alexander Mattison for the Vikings has some league-winning upside?
Absolutely, I do. I think
Why can I only hear his name in song voice?
Alexander Madison.
Yeah.
He's been
My
waiting
name
in
is-
the
Sing it for
wings.
us or no?
No, but his name is Alexander Mattison.
Come on, sing it. That was like a half measure
Yeah, I
there.
know. Well, because nobody wants to hear me sing.
Oh,
be
okay. Hold
honest.
on. I've been told we can't do it because we might owe Lin-Manuel Miranda $10,000
No,
as
you
a
get
rights
out of
issue.
that.
No,
'cause
you
you're
can
a
talk to him.
Wesleyan,
You
yeah,
gotta-
yeah.
yeah.
Lynn and I would agree to donate the money to the Wesleyan Athletic Fund. Probably not. Probably the athletic, just like the scholarship fund in
performing
general.
arts
Yeah.
All right, so here's what I'm saying. I like Alexander Madison because right now, coming off the board in the end of the 7th round as running back 23.
Okay.
When we've watched Alexander Madison fill in for Dalvin Cook in short spurts, mind you, it's small sample size, we've watched him be a potential top 10, top 12 running back, somebody that we say needs to be in your lineup.
Yeah.
Looking at him in this offense, I think there is at least a chance that Alexander Madison can outperform this running back 23 position and be a top 15, top 12, maybe even top 10 running back on a per game basis by the time you get to the end of the season. We'll see how they use him. But when I look at the running backs around him and I look at the way that they utilized him when Dalvin Cook was out, there's at least a reason in my head, a narrative that I can look forward to say, this guy outside the top 20 of running backs at least has top 12 potential for his ceiling.
Here's my question. Because when Dalvin Cook was healthy, which he was last year,
Yep.
then Alexander Madison's volume was really low.
Super low.
But when Dalvin Cook was in his heyday with the Vikings, they used him. They were not afraid to use him as a 3-down back. So
Are they going to do the same thing with Madison?
you are reading my mind.
Yeah. Great
Because
question.
will they do that? Because then I feel much more encouraged about the upside potential. But yet I feel like there's not a lot of excitement around this possibility with him. So is it just that it's not going to happen, or
That's a
why?
great-
Why is the?
This is what I would boil it
Nah,
down to,
on
is
him.
sort of to kind of summarize what I think both of you are saying. We expect the role to be awesome for Alexander Mattison. They've been talking him up all summer.
Yep.
And the roster is not stacked with backs behind him.
Nope.
Everybody, I think, sort of just assumes that he is an inferior player to Dalvin Cook. Are we certain about that, though? Right? Like, this is not replacing Christian McCaffrey, right? This is not replacing Nick Chubb. I know that Dalvin Cook's been to a Pro Bowl like each of the past 4 seasons. I think he's very good. I think he had an excellent run with Minnesota. There's a chance, maybe it's a small chance. There's a small chance that Alexander Mattison is as good or slightly better this year than Dalvin Cook. And if so, you're drafting him about 10 slots too low amongst running backs.
Right.
That, to me, is the case for
And
Alexander Mattison.
when he's filled in for him, but when Dalvin Cook was actually
Super
hurt,
useful.
he kind of looked like him.
He did,
I mean,
yeah.
very
No, he
similar
literally
style.
looked
Literally,
like him.
like
He
they
did.
can't-
The
Yes.
same hair.
2, 4,
Yeah.
same haircut,
But-
same
Single
stance.
digit,
like,
yeah.
it's
But
all
no,
very
it's really
confusing.
interesting to me, which is, so then you would think
Yeah.
he's still a relatively young guy. His workload, he's not a tired running back, even for being around for a while, because his
Should be
workload's
fresh.
been less. So
Yep.
there are a lot of reasons to be really encouraged, but I feel like we haven't, and not just us three, but the whole fantasy football community has not been really excited about Alexander Mattison.
That's why he's going as running back 23, but I think there is some potential upside there. Same with the guy named James Cook. James Cook, I think, absolutely has league-winning upside.
Dalvin Cook.
That's right. James
Brother
Dalvin
of
Cook.
Dalvin James, I'm told.
So good.
Still my favorite. I think it's one of my favorite things about.
Shout out Ian Hurtis for putting that out the first time.
Great trivia.
Great dude.
Yeah.
Great follow on Twitter, too.
James Cook. Thanks a lot, guys.
Whatever.
Appreciate that.
The guy who plays for Buffalo. How about that?
Wait till they play each other.
Last year, this is small sample size, but the reason why I love James Cook this year, small sample size. Last year as a rookie, averaged 5.7 yards per carry, highest amongst running back. 5.7 yards.
Yep.
And then when receptions, averaged 8.6 yards per reception. The dude was explosive. Now, we have not seen Buffalo utilize running backs from a fantasy perspective in a way that we've wanted to invest in them early, right? That's been a lot of the rub. Josh Allen doesn't throw the ball to running backs because he uses his legs rather than those little dump offs.
I think the path is along what you're talking about. We know James Cook is talented.
Yep.
We know the Bills have talked about, whether they actually do it, talked about using Josh Allen less as a runner. And while they did sign Damian Harris and they did sign Latavius Murray, are we sure that either one of those guys is a lock to play a premium role? Last thing I'd say, James Cook, to reiterate, awesome pass catcher. That was his forte in college. If he gets 50 catches this year, completely agree with the case.
I don't think that from that standpoint, again, you're looking at a young running back with upside and a really awesome offense that should score a lot of points. Some of this is a little bit of a narrative, right? You're looking at the offenses that you think could score a lot. So I like James Cook this year. Stephania, let's talk about Darren Waller. Do you think that Darren Waller has the potential to be a league winner this year?
Yes, I do. Because first of all, the tight end position, we always get into this trap every year. We talk about the tight end position being I think you use the term wasteland.
Wasteland is one of my favorites.
Yeah,
I need a new one this year.
Well, I don't know if it fits. Why change it? I mean, the tight end position last year, Travis Kelce still remains the tight end to beat at the top, but the top tier of tight ends is pretty shallow.
Yeah.
You know, George Kittle has traditionally been up there, but with all the pass catching options in San Francisco and some of his injury history, he may have fallen off that a little bit. Mark Andrews, who we still love in that role. And Darren Waller, the talent is there, and we've seen him perform at this level. We've seen him be a game changer, but things kind of not great last year in Vegas. He was hurt. He had a hamstring injury, which was, as we know, those can be chronic throughout the season. It was very problematic for him. And definitely some discontent, I think, with the Raiders as well by the time it got to the end of the season. So you take him.
I'm going to vote yes on that part.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to
You're
be
the kind one.
right?
Yes.
I'm trying
Yeah.
to okay. So he leaves there in a hurry, goes to the Giants, who, by the way, are going to feature him as a receiver, and not the least of which, the reason is not the least of which that they have no other huge pass catching option
Did they
for
add
Daniel Jones.
Anybody this offseason that was Paris Campbell, I think, was like the biggest name. It felt like they added.
Yeah,
in the
I mean,
passing game.
it's not to say that there aren't people who are capable, but even if you throw Wan'Dale Robinson into the mix, he's just now coming back from ACL. We've got Sterling Shepard, who we don't know if he will still be with the team, but coming off dual consecutive injuries. Then Isaiah Hodgins, who flashed some, but. Listen,
those
when
aren't
you
names,
talk about
Stephania.
it's not only that he has great hands to catch the ball, it's that he can get down the field. He's going to get people out of his way. He can make a contested catch. Like, these are things he can do that I think are different and set him apart from the other pass catchers for the Giants, and I think they'll feature him. I love it. There was one thing I was going to say about, I think some of the knock has been, he's going to be 31 years old, but
I'll say this.
He's a young 31. He barely played the first 4 years
When did
of his
he really
career.
start?
Yeah. I mean,
I
in
think
that
he's a young
sense,
31.
Yeah, I think.
I don't know. I'm not an ageist like Mike is.
That's fair. Mike is a
big time
huge
ageist.
agent.
I know. But
Did I use that term correctly? Ageist?
Yes.
Okay.
But I think about this. When he played all 16 games, which is 2019 with Oakland, when the Raiders were with Oakland, then 2020 when they moved to Las Vegas, he had over 1,000 yards receiving in each of those years. So last year was compromised because of the health.
Yeah.
I think it goes back to over 1,000 yards receiving, and I think the touchdowns are there as well.
I forget who submitted the next player, but I want to say that I love this next pick.
This next
Was it me that submitted this?
It must have been
It
you.
was me. Okay, no wonder I love the pick.
Certainly wasn't me. Let's talk about this. San Francisco 49ers field. You got Deebo Samuel as a potential league winner.
Do you want me to pander to Stephania? Do you want me
Yes,
to tell the
please.
truth, or do you want
Go
to
ahead.
do both? Because I am right now.
Wow.
Deebo freaking Samuel. He was the wide receiver 2 seasons ago. I am
19
telling you
problems.
this. Things happened last year that you must ignore about Deebo Samuel?
Like trading for CMC.
No, doesn't matter.
No,
there's nothing wrong with CMC being on this 49ers offense that can take away from Deebo Samuel. His rushing volume may go down, and I don't care because what I want from Deebo Samuel is all the targets. Moreover, I've seen a lot of people say, if you go back and look at how Brock Purdy distributed the ball down the stretch last year, that sample size is so small. Deebo was hurt, and I think the 49ers would tell you in a moment of truth that despite all of their success last year, that maybe they didn't get enough out of Deebo Samuel as they could, given how talented this player is. Ayuk, freaking stud. George Kittle, total baller. They've got good complementary pieces. The two guys that are different in that offense on a play-in and play-out basis, I think, Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. I think Deebo has a vintage bounce-back year this season. That's why I'm more optimistic. We've already made our board bet on this, Daniel. I think they find ways to get Deebo Samuel the ball as a receiver a ton this year, and we are reminded why at the end of the 2021 season, we were talking about Deebo Samuel as arguably the most explosive and valuable weapon amongst pass catchers in the NFL.
Daniel, why do you hate the player on my team, Deebo Samuel?
Mama Dopp told me if I didn't have anything nice to say, I shouldn't say anything at all, Stephania. So I'm gonna let you have the field. I don't see it at any of the same way that Field does, but I don't want to poo-poo on Field's
here's
parade.
the thing.
No, you can do whatever you want. I don't care.
You said poo-poo.
I do.
You sound like my daughter right now.
I don't want to
I go poo-poo. I go poo-poo. Very proud of her for knowing that, though.
Yeah. Can we
I
clip
know.
that? Can you guys quick clip that and send it on the internet, please, to all of us?
Good social clip.
Yeah, that's a good one.
You know who's not going to go poo-poo? Deebo Samuel.
You don't think so?
And you know what? The 49ers,
Do you agree with my point, though? That I think if they had some true serum, they'd be like, we could have done a better job last year.
Yeah, but you know who else is saying that?
Deebo Samuel.
Deebo Samuel.
About himself.
About himself.
Yeah.
1,000%.
Yep.
And when he came to camp this year,
Yep.
they were all like, whoa, he looks good. He was lean. Let's not forget there were some contract things for him a year ago. Came in a little bit late to camp. Wasn't quite in the shape that he needed to be for the season. Well, he looked phenomenal this year. He's leaned up. He was ready to go. And everything they saw during camp flashed to Deebo Samuel that they had 2 years ago when we were talking about how outstanding he was. So I do think it's a bounce back year for Deebo. The only more time of the connection with Brock Purdy, with him and Brandon, like you can just see it. And you could see it in camp. It's just that offense is going to click.
And there's only one thing I regret about my Deebo explanation, which was saying that there are two guys in that offense that are different, Christian McCaffrey and Deebo Samuel. George Kittle has the exact skill set to be different. It's just that he does so many freaking things well that don't include catching the ball. That, as we know with
He's
George Kittle,
asked to block so much
he's
in the
doing
offense, yeah.
so many things that go beyond the box score that the opportunity to shine as consistently as a receiver as I think Deebo will, to me, is a little bit less.
He's been a top 25 wide receiver one time in his career, and
So
wish
what?
he
He's
was
been in the
an
NFL for
outlier.
4 seasons.
I totally hear you, and all the things that are different. He has CMC in this offense now. It's not the same quarterback. I think that Brandon Ayuk is a much better player than he was 2 years ago.
I agree with you
There's
on
a
that.
lot that I just don't see the same optimism. Totally hear the argument. Just
Wanna
don't see the same
make the
optimism.
board bet again?
Again? No, we already did it
Counts
once.
as twice?
We already did it once.
We think we should put wagers on our board bets
Brandon
instead.
Ayuk is a much better player than he was. He has really, talk about winning camps. He's sort of the one who won the training camp for San Francisco this year. But I would argue that Brandon Ayuk being that good forces people to pay more attention to Brandon Ayuk, and Deebo Samuel will sting them
Oh,
a
interesting.
few times.
All right. I got one more that I want to give out, and then we're going to move on.
We have Christian Watson on our note. That must be your pick, right?
That was Mike's pick, but he's not here, so we're going to move on from that one. There's no reason to talk about Christian Watson. Let's talk about Breece Hall. I think Breece Hall is the one that is the most intriguing to me, right? Breece Hall coming back from an ACL injury.
Yep.
You have him now with a sharing time, at least to start the season, with a former top 10 running back that we just talked about in Dalvin James Cook.
Yep.
At least to start the year, we're expecting Breece Hall to have a limited workload, work its way back up into that full playing speed. Stephania, am I talking out of turn, or does that feel about right?
No. I think that's right. I think it's interesting because when Dalvin Cook signed, we heard about him coming off shoulder surgery and then also being gone for paternity leave, or at least for his baby to be born.
Yep.
And I think the fact that he hasn't been able to get into practice, I think there's a little like, oh, are we going to be able to knock the rust off? I definitely see a work share there. But I don't know how much. We just don't know how that's going to shake out in the early part of the season. How much will they let Breece Hall do?
Yep.
But once he starts to get better, if I think I know where you're going with this, I do see this escalation for Breece Hall. I love him in the back half of the season. I think that might start a little bit earlier, but I do think they'll offload him some initially.
In case people forgot, last year, Fields Yates, he started the first 6 games of the season as running back 8 in fantasy as a rookie.
Yeah, the idea here is I know for a fact that Breece Hall still has superstar upside.
Yep.
I'm not totally sure that Dalvin Cook still has that in his bag. And the Jets, who have no time to waste this year, if Breece Hall is back to a point where he's capable of playing 65 or 70% of the snaps per game, maybe that's week 5. I don't know. Arbitrarily, I'm just saying week 5. Then who's to say that won't be the split for the rest of the season? Couldn't agree more. Breece Hall. My general thesis for guys that have league-winning upside, go find super freaks. Like, what a crazy strategy I'm employing here. Just go find super freaks, talented and athletically.
Yeah, man. I'll say this: if you're going to draft Breece Hall, don't go out and grab someone like Alvin Kamara. Right? Not the kind of running back that you want to do roster construction with. Kamara's going to miss the first 3 weeks of the season. If you're drafting another running back, you want to make sure that he's there for those potentially lean Breece Hall weeks to start the season. But I think as we get towards the second half of the year, we saw this kid as the future of this backfield. He is far and away seemingly the best running back for the New York Jets.
Best.
I think he has league-winning upside.
I think Stephania has league-winning analysis. Just thought of that.
Oh, look at that.
What do you want, Field?
What?
What do you need from me?
I appreciated you agreeing on the Deebo Samuel thought. So
That was so fast. What do you want, Field? What is it? What are you looking for?
Sorry.
Oh, that's so good. This is a really fun show. Looking at league winning upside, just again, everything draft related is so much fun because the strategy can be basically whatever you want it to be. Just
I have
talking
an
about
idea. Let's do it again tomorrow.
You want to?
Well, maybe not league winner specifically, but let's do the show again tomorrow.
We can do that.
Okay, count me in.
I am here, Stephania. We love you. Thank you so much for hanging out with us. On behalf of Stephania and Field, well, I don't know. Are you going to be here tomorrow or are you not going to be here tomorrow? Sometimes we get Mike Clay.
Not. Yeah, you might have to settle.
I don't know
for
what's
Mike
going to
Clay.
happen tomorrow.
I'll
Really
be here
excited.
Thursday.
Love this show. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. We love you. Please don't forget to love each other. Be kind to yourself. You have earned it. We will be back tomorrow with another show.
Enjoy your drafts tonight.
Rosie's got a draft tonight. Chapin, got any drafts coming up?
2. Yeah, she's delaying them to like basically the last moment.
You know why? Because she listens to the podcast, Field.
She may not anymore, but
Okay.
I'll have to ask on that one.
Can you at least tell her to download?
Yeah, just
Duh.
subscribe.
We got
don't
bills
need you
to
to
pay.
listen.